And so if they ever want to, right, and they find that you are annoying or you're critical of the government or whatever, they can, look at the registration list and see like, oh, you're actually using a VPN, stop being critical of the government, and also going to remove that possibility that you no longer can use the VPN for registration service. And so that is, I think, really kind of awful part here is that it gives the government a lot of power to decide who gets on this list, who will have this ability to be on this list. And this probably requires you to, act in, certain way. And that's probably one of the bigger issue here is that they use quite generic statements like terrorism related activities, immoral content, or whatever that might be, and then just being able to blanketly sweep any way of like being able to inform yourself on what kind of topics you want to, whether that's on, women's rights or anything else. Last but not least is that there's this VPN called Amnesia, which is used in Russia by Russian activists, as Russia has also quite recently decided to adopt these kind of VPN registration requirements. And so that's something that people might consider. From what I understand, that there's a free option and there's a paid option for higher speeds.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Digi Pod. I am Farieha Aziz. Today I'm joined by Jurre Van Bergen, who is a technologist at Security Lab at Amnesty International. Thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about a very important and pertinent issue, especially with respect to Pakistan as VPN registration is underway. But to understand this a little more in terms of what a VPN is and the privacy concerns, um, could you first tell us what a VPN exactly is and how it works? Because in Pakistan, typically it's used as a circumvention tool, but primarily it's supposed to be a privacy measure.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it might be good to kind of give our viewers an understanding a little bit of how the internet works. So normally when you connect from your internet service provider, your traffic goes from, for example, your mobile phone to your service provider and it sort of exits there. So someone looking at the wire will see, I'm connecting from Pakistan with this kind of device and I'm visiting Dawn.com. With a VPN, like most people will use, they will kind of encrypt your internet traffic and make you exit your internet traffic from a different service provider. Then what's normally your own internet service provider. So this could be a VPN provider located in a foreign country. So anyone listening on the wire will not see what kind of website you visit this way or other servers you might connect to as long as the VPN is enabled on that device. Another way is for people that use a VPN, right, is for work purposes. So certain IT people might use that to remotely log into systems that they maintain. And so from my understanding currently is that the PTA is mostly concerned about foreign-based VPN servers and not typically local VPN servers. But it doesn't rule out that those might be blocked as well in the future. And that might be kind of like one of the main worries is that at some point after this registration deadline that was very short, they might flip the switch and be able to kind of like blanketly ban access from those that rely on the VPNs for either work or other purposes, like being able to just inform themselves on whatever topic that they might feel like without any worry of information that might be censored.
We have faced VPN outages because a lot of VPNs people were using have been blocked. And primarily, people have downloaded these VPNs to circumvent, for example, the ban on X, or other, there have been WhatsApp media functions. But what kind of concerns does this raise? So you mentioned that obviously there's, IP masking or also connecting to service, and there's encryption that comes with VPN. But what the PTA is requiring is people to disclose their IPs and also a static IP. And they also want the endpoints disclosed. Would this raise privacy concerns or does this defeat the purpose of a VPN?
I think what is kind of important here is that what the PTA really wants from people is like them having a and then requiring the need of a static IP address, which is not something that most of the time you get by default from your internet service provider. From my understanding is that with some ISPs in Pakistan, this is an additional service that you have to request. That's most of the time that's only for IPv4. So there's different kinds of addresses kind of that the internet relies on. One is IPv4. That's a very old standard, and there's only a very limited amount of those addresses available. There's this other thing called IPv6, which is this kind of like newer standard. There's enough addresses for like a really long time that people might be able to use. Problem is the adoption is quite low within Pakistan. There's only a certain amount of ISPs that offer this service. Currently, from what I've been able to find out on the PTA website, is that there's no kind of guidance whether IPv6 is something that's supported in marketing this kind of VPN registration or not. And so I think there's a couple of things here that might happen. The registration deadline was quite short for this. This might mean that, you having to get this license or this additional service from your ISP might not be delivered in time. So that might mean that you not be able to use a foreign VPN that you might rely on for work. The other thing is that you having to disclose the IP from your work as well as your local IP, enable this in the allow list in the firewall. And so they're always able to kind of like find out, even though the traffic is encrypted, that we're able to see, who might be able to make use of it, where the people located, who's running it, kind of, et cetera, et cetera. And so if they ever want to, right, and they find that you are annoying or you're critical of the government or whatever, they can, look at the registration list and see like, oh, you're actually using a VPN, stop being critical of the government, and also gonna remove that, possibility that you no longer can use the VPN registration service. And so that is, I think, really kind of awful part here is that it gives the government a lot of power to decide who gets on this list, who will have this ability to be on this list. And this probably requires you to, act in, certain way. So that might mean that you have to self-censor in all kinds of ways in your expression, as well as that this is not this is just for businesses. For anyone else, this doesn't seem to be able to use VPNs, and that's probably one of the bigger issue here, is that they use quite generic statements like terrorism-related activities, immoral content, or whatever that might be, and then just being able to blanketly sweep any way of like being able to inform yourself on what kind of topics you want to, whether that's on women's rights or anything else, and it's not really clear what kind of websites they censor either. As far as I understand, there's no open list of websites that the PTA censors. And so you have to rely on a lot of external services from groups like UNI to find out what kind of websites are being censored within Pakistan.
Absolutely. And also because this is only being made available to the industry, and individuals also, those who use it for business, but journalists, activists, students, a host of people use VPNs because there are so many arbitrary bans. Like you said, there's no open list. So one day something is blocked, the other day something else. But we've also seen VPN blocking happen where people's VPNs were not working. What kind of technical ability would they have to block specific VPNs?
There's a couple ways on how the PTA might go on from blocking this. So one is either kind of go through this one by one. So they look at what kind of VPN are being used by people. They might be able to monitor X or other social networks to see what kind of VPNs would still go through the firewall, and then kind of go through them one by one to block those IP addresses. But probably what they will do is that they will use techniques like deep packet inspection And this is a very technical way of being able to say, this specific internet traffic can be considered a VPN, and we're gonna just blanketly ban that. And so basically the firewall will then sort of like drop that kind of traffic. It will not be able to establish any kind of connection to a foreign VPN server. From what I understand, that was already kind of possible with the technology on the firewall that they had on the Sandvine. So that was already using that kind of technology where they were able to distinguish between different kinds of traffic types. But yeah, this is probably what they will end up doing is look at the internet traffic and uh, make distinctions for what it is, and then being able to like block this. And this will probably be installed at various ISPs in order to really have this more kind of like decentralized and to drop traffic this way.
Now, VPNs are the only source or accessing content which is arbitrarily blocked. And it's not just, blanket blockades like the ban on X, but a lot of people are also saying that while the videos on specific YouTube channels are there, but their access is not, they can't gain access without a VPN or on certain connections. Now, if the VPNs are also blocked, what option do users have then to access content and circumvent some of these blockades?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think circumvention will always be a bit of an arms race on, today something might work and the next day might not. Especially with this new alleged firewall that they have installed that will have more capabilities. So I think there's some ways still that might happen. So one thing might just be that some VPNs might still work for whatever reason. However, I think the risk with that is that they might not work for a very long period of time. So they might work from one day, and the next day they might be blocked. The other one is that people might be able to use something called the Tor browser from the Tor project. This is a free project run by a foundation, has infrastructure run by volunteers across the world. It has anti-circumvention technology built into the browser. And so this makes it more complicated for sensors or national firewalls like the ones found in Pakistan to block it. And so that's torproject.org where you can go to. The other one is called Siphon, which is another kind of like censorship circumvention system that is being used in a whole range of countries. So that might be something that might also still work in Pakistan, although that all remains to be seen. And I think last but not least is that there's this VPN called Amnesia, which is used in Russia by Russian activists, as Russia has also quite recently decided to adopt these kind of VPN registration requirements. And so that's something that people might consider. From what I understand, that there's a free option and there's a paid option for higher speeds.
Hopefully, the PTA is not going to make this list and also come after all of these available tools. Of course, the internet itself has been disrupted. Finally, because you mentioned registration, such as in countries like Russia. And we know that certain countries, and it's mostly under authoritarian setups, that you have VPN registration requirements. What kind of concerns does VPN registration raise with respect to anonymity, identity, and especially privacy as a whole?
Yeah, so I think there's some countries like Russia, China, India, and Iran, among others, that have these kind of requirements for either companies or individuals to apply for a specific license to use a VPN. You might think that, it might be great if I, as an individual, is able to register my VPN, get on this allow list, and be able to use my VPN. Problem with that, of course, is that they'll be able to still track the kind of like bandwidth that you use. They might still kick you out of the allow list just for using specific rights. Like if you go to a protest, they might, and they find you, arrest you, they might block you from these kind of allow lists. You don't really have that anonymity kind of like built in, right? Because you now end up on this like government list where you have to apply for a permit to basically use the internet, something that you are already paying for, with your service provider, using all kinds of strawman arguments that a lot of the governments are making, where they say, it's for security or cyber security or other kind of terrorism related or otherwise immoral content. They use the kind of arguments to really like A, censor and B, kind of like control who might get on this allow list and who might not get on this allow list. All of this is quite opaque and not be able to kind of like see through this. There's no kind of requirements. It's not really clear how quickly people get on this allow list either. If this will be a yearly recurring thing that might need to happen. So you'll very quickly end up in this situation where they have a lot of power who they allow on this list. And I think that's really very, very worrisome. And it might be a first step into some kind of isolationist. They might decide which websites are still being able to visit. This is often kind of a first step into a lot more awful stuff that will happen. And so I think it's really important that people speak up about this, because this is usually the first step.
And since you mentioned speak up about it, Amnesty has, of course, issued statements and has been looking at what's happening in Pakistan. Just to round off the conversation, could you just speak a little bit about how Amnesty is looking at this particular development in Pakistan?
We've been quite closely monitoring the latest developments in Pakistan of the last couple of months, especially with the first statements where internet traffic was slow. There were inconsistent kind of messaging about what was actually happening, whether there was a new firewall, maybe there's no new firewall, people being able having to, trouble accessing certain websites, or whether internet was faster with VPNs. The government now kind of deciding that they, kind of going to outlaw VPNs. And so we are really closely monitoring this situation, and we'll try and kind of figure out who might be responsible for this.
Jurre, thank you so much for making time for DawnNews English. This is all we have on the Digi Pod today.